A lot of people really enjoy talking about the what ifs of apocalypse like scenarios. And today we're going to be talking about what would happen in Alaska if an apocalypse were to suddenly come upon us and we were going to have to suddenly survive. So I'm going to give you some scenarios, some ideas as to exactly how this might shake out in the last frontier. Before we get started, though, make sure you give this video a like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And we're trying to get to 10,000 subscribers on this channel. So make sure you go ahead and do that so we can hit that milestone. And let's go and jump into today's video. All right, so just to set the kind of create the setting real quick, I'm going to say this is a solar flare. So for those of you who aren't aware, this is a flare that comes from the sun, and it fries all the electronics. Okay, anything that it's electrical, it's no mas. Okay, can't use it, and this includes like batteries. It includes you can't start your car, like your heating, all that's not going to work. Lights obviously aren't going to work. And pretty much nothing is going to work that is any kind of electricity as a component to it. And we're going to say this is going to be during the summertime in Alaska, so we've got long sunlight, and we're going to help ourselves out a little bit and say that it is a year where we don't have any forest fires, so it's a fairly mild summer. And we're also going to say that it's peacetime, so we're not going to have to worry about like invading people from outside. All right, now the first thing that I'm going to look at is going to be the government. So first off, I don't think that there's just going to be this enormous breakdown of government at large. Now, I think there's going to be a lot of confusion right off the get-go, and you probably see like a little bit of tribalism where people kind of break down into their smaller family units for a little bit. But by and large, people do really need to have that sense of government and be able to have something that provides a little bit of leadership. And so for that reason, I don't think that all government is just going to completely break down and just necessarily, even if it was a really bad scenario like that we would just immediately go straight feral, like clan, tribe style. I don't really see that happening. But with that being the case, though, because we are so isolated up here in Alaska, that is actually going to really impact our governments up here. And the reason I say that is because we are so far removed. Federal government is going to be very, very challenged to do any kind of management up here in Alaska. And our capital is so laughably removed from where the majority of people live here in the state, because they're in Juneau. Like, without the use of technology, boats, planes, and all that, they're not going to be able to get to us. So for all intents and purposes, what we have here in South Central Alaska, as far as our local government, is what we have, and we're going to have to make it or not on our own. Second thing I'm going to look at is what's going to likely happen as far as food goes. Now, we have a lot of natural food sources up here in Alaska. We've got salmon, we've got the game, we've got some farming to a certain extent, but those resources are not going to necessarily last forever, and it's going to be something where we're going to have to develop our abilities to go out of the immediate area to really start gaining more and more of those resources. And obviously we'll have a little bit of dry food goods and stuff like that here for a little bit, but obviously transportation route of stuff coming up here is for the most part really not going to exist. And so for that reason, we have to be able to sustain ourselves without the use food sources from the outside bringing in importing food. And so yeah, we'll get more into that in just a minute here and talk about what the implications of that would be. Kind of talking a little bit about food real quick. If we're looking at the economy, really what I would expect is we would probably see that beans and bullets would become the new marker of value, I guess you should say. So beans, bullets, and the willingness to use the latter is probably going to become one of the most valuable things if we're looking at the economic system. And it's really going to be probably broken down into the barter system again, because I just really don't see us really sticking with the dollar very much, or really any currency given by a government when there's such a breakdown like that. You study historical case studies, and that's really just not what we see. People don't like stay with currency if society completely breaks down like that, or the government breaks down. And so for that reason, yeah, barter system is probably going to be the way to go, and whoever can consistently provide food and lodging are probably going to come to the very top of the economic hierarchy very quickly in a scenario like this. So If you can provide both, congratulations. You're probably going to be set up pretty good during the apocalypse, if you can actually protect it. And that's why I say beans and bullets and the willingness to use the latter are probably going to be the most important assets you can have economically. All right, now let's go and take a look and see what would happen as far as the medical scene would go. I've made a commitment not to use any four-letter words on this channel, but yeah, I would just say we're probably up a creek without a paddle. Let's just put it that way as far as the medical scene goes. And really what that comes down to is we are very reliant upon machines to give correct dosages and to keep things refrigerated at just a certain temperature. And if that goes away, then a lot of the preciseness of our medical field goes away as well. Doctors are really not going to be providing any high level services, surgeries, stuff like that. And their ability to use like MRIs, CAT scans, like all that kind of just goes away. So you're probably going to be best served during this apocalypse scenario, finding some kind of a nurse or finding maybe some kind of a paramedic. If you can, convince them by any means to join your team, then that is probably going to be a really good option because, those are the folks that are going to be dealing with more acute injuries that do occur. And that is really going to help out a lot more than someone that was doing plastic surgery, No offense to my plastic surgery people, but during an apocalypse, probably not going to be the most valuable skill set ever. We're going to continue on with our apocalypse shakedown in just a minute, though. Before we do, though, just wanted to make sure you do know that in addition to running this channel and talking about the apocalypse in Alaska, I also do host a lot of people who've recently moved up here to really talk about their experience, about what they think about the state, to really give you an idea from the people who actually live here about what Alaska is like. So if that's something that would benefit you, do go check that out in the description section down below. And make sure you subscribe and start following us there as well. Also, I have a meetup group for people who currently live up here in Alaska or those who are going to live up here in the near future where I take people out once a month to just do some kind of like hike, sledding. We'll do family photos, stuff like that. And that really does give you the ability to kind of get out a little bit and start developing those social connections. So do make sure you go take advantage of that. And let's go and finish today's video. All right, now looking at transportation, we've already established we're not going to have cars, we're not going to have boats unless it's a sailboat, and we're not going to have airplanes and stuff like that. So for that reason, transportation of large quantities of stuff is going to become very challenging. And luckily, this is during the summertime, so we're at least going to have the roads, because if this was, 200 years ago, you'd have to just cut your way through all the forests and everything, and that's obviously a lot more challenging than it is walking on the Seward Highway. And so we at least have that going for us, and it is the summertime. Now, as soon as it does start snowing, that is going to make it very difficult because we don't have the ability to clear the roads anymore. And so, snowshoeing and all that is going to have to come back into style. I really hate to say it, but I think cyclists are going to become the cool guys and gals, and that kind of rubs me wrong, but, it's the apocalypse. Get your apocalypse face on. They're probably going to be the cool ones again because at least they have the ability to consistently go from town to town. Sled dogging is probably going to become pretty popular again as well during the wintertime, and, unfortunately, snow machines, all that, that's not going to work either because, you obviously need electricity, spark plugs, and all that stuff to make the machine actually work. That's really what I'm seeing as far as transportation. Unfortunately, it doesn't look good. If you're a long-distance runner, maybe you're going to be popular too. Not very likely, though. Now, another question I would really have is how much tribalism would take over if we're looking at these little places. So what I mentioned before with the government, are we going to break down into our smallest unit of government, which is going to be the family, and just stay there? Or are we going to be able to develop the ability, well, not develop, but continue our ability to cooperate as a community in order to come to grips with whatever problem it is that we have? Are we going to have just families going out and taking care of their food problems, or are we going to be able to work together as an entire community in order to acquire food? Now, I think for the most part, in most towns, they're going to have the ability, after a period of a lot of uncertainty, to be able to come together and to make it work. Okay, and most communities in Alaska already have kind of that built-in ability to cooperate. If they don't, then I guess it's just done with them. should have built a better community. I don't know what to tell you. If you're not sure about what community that is, let me know. Be happy to help. If you find yourself living in said community, might be time to move. Let me know. I can sell your house. Really, my question as far as tribalism goes is, would there be a scenario where the towns actually start competing with each other? So it's not really people competing within the town I'm concerned about. I'm more concerned about, how would Palmer and Wasilla interact if Palmer is going all the way down to the Kenai to get salmon and then bring it back? Are we going to run into a big conflict with the people who live in the Kenai Soldotna area? These places that are super remote down in the southeast Alaska, are they going to be able to cooperate with each other? Are they going to be able to develop some mode of transportation? I mean, I guess they've got canoes and kayaks and all that, but that's kind of tough for anything except for transportation. Those of you on Kodiak, yeah, good luck. Just you and the bears, and as soon as the lights flip on again and we get power back, I'm going to be interested to see what we find. Maybe you'll just be one with the bears at that point, but but yes, that is going to be my main concern, is how these different towns are going to interact with each other, and if there's going to be any fighting among towns, or as a bigger state, if we're going to be able to maintain our level of order and being able to cooperate town to town. So, we'll just see. I think bigger cities like Anchorage might actually fracture pretty quickly in that kind of a scenario, just because geographically it is so large, and it's very difficult in this scenario to cooperate and coordinate people. So, yeah, I think you'd probably see more tribalism in places like Anchorage than you would see on other places. But I think by and large, smaller towns are going to have ability to maintain cohesion than what you'd have in most other places. All right, now the next thing we're going to be talking about, and you would think this would be the first thing I would talk about as a real estate agent, and that is the lodging. Well, first off, I'm going to say that professional services and real estate agents probably going to go right away overnight, which I know everyone's really really sad and heartbroken about that. But lodging is going to still be something that is important. And really, what's going to be the most important thing about lodging to me is going to be whether or not the house has a wood stove, because you do not have the ability anymore to use forced air. You don't have the ability to use oil. I guess even if you did have a big drum of oil on the side of the building and that's how you kept warm, that's not going to last forever, even if you found some way to make it work without any spark of electricity. And so that is going to be something that's going to become really important, is whether or not your property has a wood stove. Also, the size of the property is going to become very important as well. You no longer want these big, enormous houses. You want something that is small and compact and insulated and easy to keep warm. Those are going to be the things that are going to be really important as we're moving closer and closer to the winter time, because the winter summers in Alaska are not particularly long. I'm being generous and saying this happens maybe around mid-May. So we have, what is that, maybe 4 months to get everything all together and be ready to make it through the winter. And it's going to become really pressing on everybody very quickly, is just how short the summers are and how much we have to get done between now and then to actually be ready for the winter time. And it's going to have a whole lot less things to do if at least you have a smaller house and you don't need as much firewood to keep the property warm. So what would my plan be during the Alaskan apocalypse? Well, first off, I would say I would definitely want to consolidate all the important belongings I have, which we've already mentioned before. That's going to be beans, that's going to be bullets, and, probably also beyond that, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, just saying it's those two. But, I mean, I'm probably also going to be looking at clothing and fuel, wood to keep the fires going and all that. That would probably be pretty important, too. Try to consolidate that, and then try to rendezvous with family members and friends to first off make sure that they're okay, provide some organization to make sure that we're situated well as far as that goes. And then the next thing after that would be to start kind of helping organizing with the community and try to figure out as a whole how it is that we are going to be ready for the wintertime that is coming up here. And I mean, yeah, a lot of different strategies that could be done at that point. I guess we'd have to hash it out at that point. Obviously, wildlife is going to be a good source of food for a little bit, and I don't think it's going to last forever. So one thing I would probably be looking at is making the long trip down to the Kenai Peninsula and seeing if that is something that we could do in order to help with our food supply and also just see how the rest of the state is faring as well along the way. So these are going to be my predictions for how the apocalypse shakes out in Alaska. How would you see these things shaking out? What would you expect to see happen and what would you do? What would be your strategy? Make sure you post those in the comments section down below. These are just kind of fun conversations to have. I'm not really planning on these to be a playbook for you necessarily, but just kind of fun conversations to have. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.